welcome back to the Baby Settler. Today we are talking about this notion that babies that are breastfed need less milk in their bottles than formula-fed babies. And I will just start off by saying that that is highly speculative and it really triggers me. So that's one of those topics that my blood boils, I get really triggered, and I want to break it down today, my thoughts, and just kind of give you some information that you can really use to hopefully empower you to make the best decision for you and your baby when it comes to bottle feeding if you are an exclusive breastfeeding mama. Okay, so let's start off by breaking down this notion of breast milk versus formula. So yes, we know that there is a higher concentration of nutrients in breast milk than there is in formula. So I will agree that that is a true statement. However, let's define need versus I personally want. Am triggered frequently on Instagram when I see lactation consultants, lactation companies selling products, creating content promoting that a breastfed baby somehow needs less volume in a bottle than a formula-fed baby. And generally, I know their intention is good, but I want to run down the list of reasons why it triggers me and why it's promoting information like that could really set a mom and baby up in a bad place. For example, my sister-in-law was telling me about a mom that is a friend of hers. They're nurses, and this mom is working a 12-hour shift. She's on her feet all day. She's not pumping. You know, if you're a nurse, you can relate to this. You know, being on your feet all day, working a 12-hour shift is it's stressful. So if you are a breastfeeding mom who, 3 days a week, you exclusively breastfeed your baby, and then you go to work and you're pumping around the clock for 12 hours for sessions for your baby to get bottles while you're at work, well, your bottle amount that you pump, the volume that you pump, is probably going to be lower than what your baby actually gets when they're breastfeeding. So in this specific, and I'll tell you why in a minute, but in this specific scenario, this mom was pumping 2 ounces, okay? She's pumping 2 ounces throughout the day because she's stressed at work. She's pumping at weird times because she's doing patient care. So her baby is at home potentially getting 4 to 5 bottles while she's away, and all she's pumping is 2 to 3 ounces. The baby is not getting the volume in that 12-hour day that she needs to be able to continue sleeping through the night that she was. So let's kind of dive into that a little bit more. So there's a difference in need versus want. So yes, we can all agree that there is a set volume that a baby needs per 24 hours to grow and gain weight. Now, babies are not little robots. Every baby's appetite is going to be different. Some babies are going to want to eat more than others. I have 4 kids. I can tell you that their appetites are all unique and different, specific to each other. And so we have to really look at babies in the same way. And we have to differentiate need versus want. So I'm getting ready to do that for you. But I wanted to highlight that example of that mom only pumping 2 ounces when she's at work at a high stress time. Maybe she's not having that letdown, that surge of oxytocin. So the pump is literally pulling the milk out of her as opposed to helping her push the milk out. When you are breastfeeding, if you're mostly a breastfeeding mom and you're exclusively breastfeeding, your baby is latching, you're having that surge of oxytocin. Oxytocin is the hormone that is responsible for moving the milk out, pushing the milk out. If you're not having that with the pump, then you're absolutely not pumping the same volume that you would have if you were breastfeeding. So that's one factor. But the other factor is that your breast milk volume changes throughout the day. So if you think of a 24-hour window of time, your prolactin level, the hormone that is responsible for making milk, prolactin is going to be higher at certain times of the 24-hour window. Typically, that is going to be early morning hours, say 1 a.m., 2 a.m., on through the first half of your day. Really, when I'm helping families in real life and we're supplementing or we're trying to combo feed or whatever, we have a baby that has oral restriction, they're not very good at transferring milk, there's a million different scenarios, but specifically, I will try to get a baby to take a full feed at a high supply time when I'm trying to wean off of supplementation. Why? Because I know that there's going to be a lot more easier on tap milk as opposed to that on-demand milk that is made more on-demand that's a little bit more difficult to get out. When your prolactin level is higher based on hormones, which is more than likely between 1 to 2 a.m. through 11 a.m., 12 p.m., think about prolactin at 1 a.m. is up here, then it's kind of on a steady decrease, and then let's say like 3, 4, 5, 6 p.m., it's kind of down here, and then it's on its way back up. When you are pumping, if you're pumping at 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock, you're probably getting a lot less than you would if you were pumping at different times during the day. So when we are thinking about a bottle-fed baby, so let's go back to that mom who's a nurse, and she is working 12 hours a week, and she's off 4 days a week. She's breastfeeding when she's with her baby, when she's not at work, and everything's going fine. The baby is sleeping well. She's feeding 6 to 7 times in a 24-hour window. This baby, let's imagine this baby's 4 months old. The baby's sleeping through the night, maybe does one wake up for a feed sometime between 3 to 4 a.m., but otherwise is going down around 7 p.m., sleeping great. But then she works 2 days in a row. And she pumps before she leaves the house in the morning. So let's say she's going to leave the house at 6:15. Her baby is still asleep. She pumps real quick before she leaves, and she pumps 8 ounces. But she's been told that babies that are breastfed and they're taking a bottle need less milk than babies that are formula fed. And so she only puts 3 to 4 ounces in that bottle, even though she pumped 8 ounces, because she's been told that a breastfed baby doesn't need as much milk. Then she gets to work. 3 hours later, she pumps again. She pumps, 4 to 5 ounces, but she only left a 3 to 4 ounce bottle at home for her baby because that's what she's been told her baby should eat. She goes throughout the day. Her pumping volume fluctuates. So maybe she pumps 2 ounces or 3 ounces, and then she gets home and she breastfeeds her baby at night when she gets home. Her pumping volume is less in the afternoon and evening, and therefore her bottles that she's left her baby are less. So maybe she's only giving her baby a 2 or 3 ounce bottle in the afternoon or evening. So in that 24-hour window, that baby, who is typically an exclusively breastfeeding baby when when they're together, is getting bottles of only 3 to 4 ounces in the first half of her day, and even smaller bottles in the afternoon and evening. That baby is probably not getting enough volume in that 24-hour window, because what happens is when you're exclusively breastfeeding and your baby is starting to extend their sleep at night, they are going to take in more volume based on different times of the day. So that mom, when she pumped 8 ounces before she left in the morning to go to work, and she only gave her baby a 3 to 4 ounce bottle before she left, she essentially took away from the 24-hour, the total 24-hour volume that the baby normally eats. If that baby was breastfeeding, that baby would actually, maybe the baby wouldn't have taken 8 ounces, but it could have. It absolutely could have. A baby is going to take a larger volume feed earlier in the morning when they are sleeping all night long. So that baby, even if, let's say that baby took 5 to 6 ounces, that baby was taking in the volume earlier in the day that she's not getting in the afternoon or evening. So let's say mom pumps, 2 ounces at her 4 p.m. pumping session, and she only leaves the baby a 2 ounce bottle. When they're together, maybe the baby transfers 2.5, 3 ounces, but the baby's borrowing from the extra ounces that she had at that first or second feed of the day to make up for the total 24-hour volume that she needs. So I could do a whole nother video just talking about that, and I will do another video about that, but it's this concept that you have to understand, that the amount that you pump in that moment, that does not mean that that is how much your baby wants to eat in that moment, okay? So if you're only pumping 2 ounces and your baby is taking 2 ounces and they are telling you by their cues that they are still hungry, you need to feed your baby more volume, okay? So just think about it like that. volume is volume. So if your baby is used to breastfeeding and taking, 4.5, 5 ounces at a feed, but you only pump 3 ounces, your baby is going to want that 4.5 to 5 ounces that they're used to taking at that feed. So keep that in mind. The bad news is there's really not a whole lot of evidence-based information that really supports any of this. That's why I said early on, it's all speculation. So we're going to use common sense, and then I'm going to give you some other reasons why bottle-fed babies tend to eat a little bit more, and I'll get into that in just a minute. But I'm going to link below an article that is really the best article that I have found that looks at the global volume intake needs for babies 0 to 3 years old. It's not specific to the US. It's really a review of what's going on globally. And essentially, I think this article was published in May of this year of 2023. This article is saying that on average, a baby is taking about 23 ounces per 24 hours as kind of that minimum volume that they need to be able to gain weight and grow between months 1 to 6. So before starting solids, those early newborn days when there's a different calculation that we could come up with because it's weight based. So it's a certain number of milliliters per weight in a 24-hour window is how we calculate like what is the minimum volume that your baby needs to gain weight to feel full and to be adequate, to be able to gain that weight at the adequate rate. So I'm going to link that here, but the biggest takeaway for that is every baby is different. Every baby's appetite is going to be different. You want your baby to stay on the same growth curve. So it's not a goal for our baby to be born and be on the 10th percentile and then shoot up to the 90th. It's also not good if we were at the 90th and now we're all the way down here at the 10th percentile. Like, extremes are not good. We want the same growth curve. I think sometimes what happens is parents feel like they've got to catch up. Like, if their baby is in the 5 or 10th percentile, then somehow they've got to catch up and get on that higher percentile. That is not the goal. The goal is that your baby stays on the same growth curve, okay? We don't want them dropping off the growth curve. We want them to stay on the same curve. And you want to really read your baby. Is your baby happy and content after feeds? Are they sleeping well? Are they on the same growth curve? If all of those things are happening, then you can probably rest easy that your baby is getting enough. However, if your baby is a terrible sleeper, by that I mean your baby will not sleep when they are put down. It seems like they're constantly hungry, and your baby is past those first 6 weeks postpartum, and you feel like feeding is going well, but there's just this weird unknown, then I highly recommend working with a lactation consultant and like following growth over the course of a month or so you can kind of track like what does the weight gain look like from week to week. Typically we should see babies gain weight at a rate of about 4 to 7 ounces a week. Through the first 3 months, around 3 months, growth can slow down a little bit and we see that weight gain slow down a little bit, but we have to look at averages. We have to look at the growth curve and make sure that our baby is following the same growth curve. So I hope that helps you a little bit. Take a deep breath. The bigger issue in all of this, and really my biggest issue with this whole, when I see a reel or a post that is supposed to help a breastfeeding mom feel like if she's not pumping that much that, it's not a big deal. Breastfed babies need less milk. My biggest issue with that is that it really I feel like it is shaming all of our formula feeding parents and moms. I feel like as a lactation consultant, that we're when you say something like that you are potentially painting formula as a bad thing, and that's just really not a bad thing. One reel that I saw specifically was an example of a bottle, and it was like talking about how old the baby is and they're adding milk to it. And so as the baby got older, the baby needed more milk. And then let's fast forward, the baby's a month old and they're pouring milk into this bottle and it's just like overflowing. And basically they're saying breastfed babies don't need as much milk because there's higher concentration of nutrients in breast milk, and that you're overfeeding your baby if you're feeding them more milk. So that was the implication that was behind it. And that is just not accurate. It's not as black and white as that. And the other thing, I'll take it a step further to say that there's this implication that if you're formula feeding and you're overfeeding your baby, that you're setting your baby up to be overweight as an adult, and that you're potentially setting your baby up to struggle with obesity for the rest of their life. And that is not specific to formula. So I want to remove the word formula, and let's talk about bottle feeding and really the importance of quality bottle feeds, and kind of unpack that for a second. So why might a bottle fed baby eat more? One of the big things is that sucking, especially in the 4th trimester, so those first 12 weeks after delivery, sucking is a way that babies really soothe. So a newborn is going to suck for soothing. So if you are feeding your baby a bottle and they are not breastfeeding, and we're going to talk in a minute about like proper bottle feeding techniques and unpack that, but specifically talking about a bottle, a baby that is taking a bottle might not get as much time and opportunity to suck for soothing as a baby who is breastfeeding. And so I think sometimes what can happen is that babies aren't necessarily hungry, but they're getting a bottle and they're using the bottle and feeding for soothing instead of us removing the bottle and using some other soothing techniques. So if you are feeding a newborn, an infant, you need to be aware of the difference between non-nutritive sucking and an active sucking, vigorous feeding, I'm hungry, I want to eat, suck. They are two different things, and it's really important that you notice the difference between those two things, so that when your baby transitions to that non-nutritive sucking, you can remove the bottle, right? You can remove the bottle and take it out of the equation and stick a pacifier in their mouth or use some other technique to help them soothe. We don't want to promote feeding when a baby has transitioned to, I'm full, I just want to suck for soothing. So that's a piece of it. Not pacing bottle feeds. So whether you are breastfeeding pumped milk or formula, if you are not paced bottle feeding, you are setting your baby up to potentially have reflux, to overeat, to not have quality bottle feedings. Paced bottle feeding is imperative to promote quality bottle feeds, and then also to promote sleep. So there's a million different ways that you can pace bottle feed. I'm gonna do another YouTube video that really looks at pace bottle feeding and the specifics behind it, because I ask parents every day, I'm like, oh, do you know how to pace bottle feed? And they'll tell me that a nurse or somebody at the hospital or whatever showed them how to pace bottle feed. And really the way that they're feeding is not really accurate. And then making sure that your baby is getting a quality bottle feed. That kind of piggybacks onto pace bottle feeding. But in short, babies that are not getting quality bottle feeds, they tend to be uncomfortable. They'll swallow a lot of air. Their belly might hurt. And for a newborn or an infant in those first, 4 to 6 months after life, and even the first year, but I feel like it's really apparent in those first 4 to 6 months, there's signs for being uncomfortable. A lot of parents mistake them for hunger cues. So if you're, maybe your baby's already had a full feeding and, an hour goes by and they're over there crying and maybe they're rooting on their hand, or, you interpret their cues as I'm hungry, when really they're just uncomfortable for whatever reason. Maybe they need to burp. Maybe they have gas. It could be many different reasons for why they're uncomfortable. But a lot of that goes back to a quality bottle feeding. Are they getting a quality bottle feed? It has to do with the bottle that you're using. There are so many bottles on the market. Like my number one, this is not a paid promotion, but my number one bottle feeding recommendation is Dr. Brown's bottles. They're tried and true. They've been around for decades. They're amazing bottles. I have yet to find another bottle that I can get the same outcome with as a Dr. Brown's bottle. Dr. Brown's bottles have an excellent venting system. The flow rate is standardized. Like, yes, there's a lot of pieces. Yes, they're probably not they're not the most easy bottles on the market, but they promote quality bottle feedings for people that feeding is not their specialty. So like if grandma or, you know, your friend or whoever wants to feed the baby, hand them the baby with a Dr. Brown's bottle, turn the baby on her side. And that's, I mean, it's hard to like mess up that feeding. So I think making sure that you're using the right bottle is helpful. Making sure that your baby doesn't have any kind of oral restriction or oral tension. If your baby is having any signs of reflux, which I'll do another video on, but you have to go back to the quality of the feeding. Is it a good quality feeding? A baby that has reflux, a baby that's uncomfortable, you're going to feel this little devil on your shoulder say, maybe she's hungry. Maybe she's hungry. That's what's going on with her. Maybe she's hungry. And then you're going to want to feed her more because you're going to interpret those cues as hunger cues because they look very, very similar. So why are all of these breastfeeding experts speculating that a baby who is getting pumped milk needs less volume than a baby who is formula feeding? And I know their heart is in the right place. Like I absolutely know their heart is in the right place. What they're wanting to do is they're wanting to support these moms who aren't pumping that much volume, because we talked about that earlier on. Sometimes you don't pump as much as what your baby is actually transferring, and that's normal. Moms with realistic expectations about the volume that you're pumping and how much your baby's taking, but you know, every mom's breast storage capacity is different. So it's not specific to large breasts versus small breasts or anything like that. It is very specific to each mom. One mom may be able to hold, you know, 1.5 ounces of on-tap milk in her breast. The baby latches on. That's how much she's got. She's got 1.5 ounces that's stored in her breast. Another mom may be able to hold 4 ounces in each breast. So you have a baby that could get between 3 to 8 ounces at a breastfeed. One baby can get about 3 ounces, one baby can get about 8 ounces. So that is really the biggest difference. I would say the average is more, you know, closer to that 3 to 5 ounces per breastfeeding. If you've had a long rate of refill, like your prolactin level's higher overnight and you're going longer between feeds, your breasts are probably going to hold a little bit more. But really explaining the on-tap milk, the way that your milk supply fluctuates throughout the day, I feel like is a better way to help these moms. Large volume feeds do not equal more sleep. So I think the lactation community is coming in and we're trying to say, hey, look, you know, large volume feeds, forcing large volume feeds on your baby is not the answer. That is not going to promote sleep. And I completely agree. It does not. Well-fed babies sleep better. Feeding is just a very unique, highly specialized field. And there's a lot of people that want to add some advice and thoughts, which I think it's great to have this community, this online community, to be able to talk about things. But at the end of the day, finding your person, your feeding specialist, your village to kind of help you understand the why behind all of this, that all of these things, all of these recommendations, questioning mindset. And that is what Baby Settler is all about, is we